Hello, Dave here. Welcome to a MySQL video using PDO. In this video, we're going to go over how to do the PDO connection to two different databases and a couple of different simple querying of data. In one case, we're going to go ahead and use the bindColumn method, bindColumn, and it basically, as you return the rows or fetch the row, it actually places it into the PHP variable. And that's the bind piece. It binds a column from the table to a PHP variable. And then we're also going to look at a fetchAll type of method in the other example. So first of all, to get us rolling, and we'll see how this all looks. You see I have 10 ingredients here. Here's the pieces that we need for this demo. The PHP files I'll have out on davecoast.com after I get this video up. But let's go ahead and take a look at it here. The first item we need is localhost. We need some kind of AMP stack. I'm using XAMPP, very simple and free. Beautiful thing. Right? Apache, MySQL, Perl, and PHP. And you'll notice up here in my address bar, it's localhost, and then I just have some directory structure there. But I'm running this PDO demo.php. Here's the stuff we're going to play with today. But let's go ahead and go through our ingredients first, and then we'll move on from there. So we need a database. And in that database, we need a table, and we need a user and a password. These are all the things we need to have PHP talk to MySQL. And it doesn't matter which API you use to connect. It's just that for this specific example, we're going to use the PDO, which stands for PHP Data Objects API. So that's table one, and basically the same thing for table two. And I just created them, very simple test type of simple tables, but I wanted to show, or test type of databases. I just wanted to show that in a single simple script, you can have multiple database connections active. And we'll take a look at that for a second in PHPMyAdmin just to see what the databases look like. They're very simple. And you need a browser. For this, I'm using Firefox. Shouldn't matter. Don't know about IE. Either way, then I have 3 scripts that I created. And these are the scripts that I, just to show these features. So we have one called PDO demo.php, and that's up here. And we'll go through this code in a moment. Connect to MySQL.php, and we basically include this function to do the connection. And finally, print header, which prints the header. You see this header is red over here. Well, we're getting the color from the header color database. Okay, makes sense. Just to show that I can change the value in the database and we'll have a different color. So that's the print header PHP, and that's here. And you'll notice in here is where we use the bindColumn method, and we'll see how that works in a moment. So here's our 10 items to review. So let's go ahead and just start by taking a look at the results out here. I basically just doing some echo statements, and it's basically showing or printing this value out based on the color that is in the table. And then from here down is the demo table, and right now there's only one row in that table. And we're basically just dumping it out there. So if we look at the database right now with one row, header color table color is red. If I change that, to blue, right? So now the value is blue in the table. And what I'll do here is I'll just hit browse here, bring it up a little higher. But anyway, our one value is blue. If I come back here, refresh this screen, look at that. My header changed to blue. And you notice down here I have demo text for this video, and I have one row, rows. I didn't get that fancy to slice off the S if rows is less than 2, right? Just a rookie mistake. But anyway, let's insert another row here. And here's inserted row during video. And click go. It inserted that row, right? Browse it. Now I have 2 rows there. And if I refresh, you see that it breaks this down into 2 different rows. So let's take a look at how that happens. Okay. Here's where we start, PDO demo.php. And we start out by including our 2 functions, connect and print header. Obviously, the first thing we have to do is connect. So here's where I actually call the connect function, right? And this is a connection to my header color table. And here's a connection to my demo database color, or demo database connection, right? And again, databases with users created over them. Out here, whoops, let me bring up the code again here, right? So I include these 2 functions, and then I actually execute the connection one first. Notice that and I'm passing it 4 parameters. So if we look in here, you'll see this function has 1, 2, 3, 4 parameters coming in. And again, I just hard-coded values here for the sake of an easy demo. Didn't want to have a whole nother include or anything like that. But notice that our value is localhost. Here's the database name, the username, and the password. So we need the server, that's our MySQL server, database, user, and password. And again, I'm doing it again for the other table, or for the other database. Sorry, not table, database. And it's localhost, but this is my PDO demo database. So localhost demo database, and then the user and password that have access to that database. So if we look in the code here at connect to MySQL, right? So we declare a function, 4 parameters, host in, database in, user in, password in. And then I'm going to go ahead and do my try. So here's the PDO thing. So just any old variable name here, and I call it MySQL database link, because that's what it is. It's a connection object. And we're going to create a new PDO object based on our 4 parameters. So notice here that this is just some text. It's MySQL:host equals. And the important thing here is this MySQL here, PDO handles other databases besides just MySQL. So, but for this example, it's MySQL. So this tells it which one to use. And so I'm using MySQL. What is my host name? Well, that's passed in as host in, right, from here. So it's localhost for this connection, and it's localhost for this connection. Same server for both databases. And go back to this. Then database name, right? So that's the database in, right? We saw that we had the test header color database and the PDO demo database. then our user and password. So pretty straightforward. So we create this new object. Then we go ahead and set attributes. So once we have this object created, well, now we can use the set attribute method. And this method basically turns on the error mode and says if you have any kind of an error, cause an exception. And this is more for testing purposes. The default is that it would just be silent. So we're explicitly saying if you have a problem, let us know about it. And then I return my link to the calling script. And if there's a problem, I catch the PDO exception and the exception object and echo out the get message method of that exception object, right? And return false. So there's our simple connection script. Here is the big important piece of the puzzle, right? That didn't have to be. I could have just hard-coded that in there, but I wanted to show it as part of a separate function. But that is what actually creates the PDO connection object. And so if you're from the old world, this is like doing an open file. But what this basically sets up is our link to that specific database, and it knows what server and everything. So here's the connection piece. So now that we're connected, right, we do our two connections, and then we have these two objects available to us. Then notice I call the print header function, and notice that I'm passing it the header color database connection object. So let's go ahead and take a look at print header for a moment, and you'll see in here that we prepare an SQL statement, and we go ahead and use the prepare. And notice that's anti-SQL injection using the prepared statements. And then we use this bindColumn to hook. This is the column name, and this is the color variable from the table. I'm sorry, this is the PHP variable. So this is the MySQL table value, and we're binding that to the PHP variable. And then we actually execute the statement, and we use a while loop to loop through it. And that's our print header piece. Notice that we print out two things here. Header color has been updated with the color. That's this line over here. Header color has been updated with the color. And the second thing is this actual heading. Let me bring the code back up here. So this welcome to database testing. You notice that this is part of the while, so there can be more than one of these, and we're going to see that in a second. Just want to make a quick buzz through of the code, and then we'll walk through it slowly. So here's using our header color database connection object. And down here, here's where we use our PDO demo connection object. We prepare a statement, and we just did that in line here. Probably a little lazy and sloppy. Should have done the same as out here by creating a separate SQL statement. And again, notice I'm doing very simple SQL statements for demo purposes. Then we actually execute it. So far pretty similar. And then here, to actually get them, we fetch all. And right now I have that set to fetch num, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about. This is the actual reading individual or processing the rows from this executed statement. And we can execute it over and over again once it's prepared. And then we're basically just echoing out some of our data to see the values. And if we do have values, then we get in and we're showing this is the actual array here. That's that demo result row. Then we have this, the text to view is. Here's that text to view, right? And that's the, see the demo text from for the video, right? There's row 1 and row 2, inserted row during the video. And here it is just being displayed again. And finally, just the date from the timestamp, right? Which is at the bottom here. So we're just basically displaying this stuff from the second table. So let's go ahead and break into the nitty-gritties of what's happening inside here. Okay, let's go ahead and start out by looking at the, well, going back to the top here, right? We bring these guys in and we do the connections. So once we have these connection objects, we can move on. I wasn't planning on spending any more time on these connection objects. Pretty straightforward, and it is basically this line right here is the key important piece. But let's go ahead and focus on this print header. And again, down here, I'm just executing print header and passing it a database connection object. So in print header, right, I can go ahead and prepare an SQL statement. Well, let's take a look at this SQL statement. Let's go back to our database here. And if I get into SQL mode here, let's actually execute that statement. Notice I have the an order by there, and I'm doing a select. So let's do a go here. And it shows me basically, right, this one row, right, with blue, because that's all I am getting is this one column from the table. Well, let's go ahead, and if we look at the table, right, if I go ahead and insert another row in there, let's insert red, and I'll say go. And now let's browse those values. I have blue and red. What does that do? Okay. Well, look at that. The color has been updated with red. Welcome to database testing. Header color has been updated with the color blue. And welcome to database testing. So it is in descending sequence. That's why red is before blue. Well, let's play around with that a little bit. I'm going to take this descending off, right? And now if I run it, right, we got red, then blue. Now I'm going to go to ascending order. Now it's blue, then red, right? Just simple SQL, nothing fancy happening here. And also, notice that here has been updated with the color, $header color, right, is right here and right here. So the only place that it is set is in this bindColumn. So when this does this while with the fetch method, it is basically here we're doing a fetch. I just want to show in contrast to down here where we do a fetch all. So that's going to be the entire result set. Here we're doing fetch, so it executes this statement, right, the prepared statement, and by doing a fetch, it basically will go through each row, and that's why we say while, and this result set will equal an individual row, whereas fetchAll grabs them all at the same time. And we're passing it saying use the fetch bound way of getting it. By saying fetch bound, I'm saying that I did a bind column here, and it's saying, well, whatever I get here, do the move. So it just saves me from assigning this value from the database to this PHP value, and that's the whole purpose of having it here and echoing it out to show that, oh, here is that actual value that I read from the database, and here it is actually being used in the span, just playing around with colors, both basically showing the same thing, two different ways. But that is the key piece of what I'm trying to demonstrate here, is doing this bind column. So in summary, we set up an SQL statement, right? We just assign a PHP variable, a valid SQL statement, could be any statement. Then we go ahead and assign the prepare method, passing it this SQL statement, and we place that into a variable, and I'm just calling it my SQL request, because to me that's what it is. I'm doing a request to the MySQL server. Then we use the method bindColumn for this prepared statement, right? Or basically that the bindColumn method from the request object. Then we actually execute the SQL statement using the execute method. So this is all set up here, and then here the actual execute. So we've executed that statement. Now there is a result set out there, and the way we get at that result set is various fetch methods, and as we saw, or what I'm demoing here is fetch and fetchAll. So while result set, so I'm assigning it to a variable called result set, is equal to the fetch, so while it's true, right, while there's a row, an available row, and each time fetch executes, it basically does its own counter type of thing, and it moves on to the next current row in the result set. We're doing the fetch bound, and it's going to actually put this value from the table into this PHP value. Okay, so this is the other important PDO piece of the puzzle, right? Because this actually executes it. This binds the columns. This actually sets it up with the prepare. Here's our actual statement, and this is actually looping through row by row of that result set. And that's why I wanted to show more than one row here happening. It came through the first time, right, with blue, and the second time with red. So it's executing these statements for each row in the table. And then basically, here's the exception in case there's some kind of an error that happened. So I went ahead and updated it. I took away that descending, and now it's blue, then red. So it's in that order. We could add as many rows as we want, but I think 2 demonstrates the point. So let's move on to PODemo.php, and let's see this secondary method. And I just, again, wanted to show one, that we could do 2 different database connections, right? We have connection 1 and connection 2, completely different databases, completely different tables. But now, instead of actually retrieving and binding to a specific column, I just want to get all the rows and loop through them. So instead of using the while, we're using the for each, and that's for each row there. And again, and I'm showing just above that this demo result row count, just showing the method to get the count of rows that we got from the fetchAll. So up here, nothing new, right? Demo request equal the connection prepare, except here I'm not using a variable. I just put the text right in there, right? Need both things, but anyway, I'm just doing a select star from the PDO demo table. So no big difference in the prepare, and no difference at all in the execute. Now we're actually executing it. But now the difference is this demo result is using the fetchAll method, and it's saying the fetch type is fetch num. So what this does is it returns the number or index number of the individual column instead of the column name. And we're going to see the difference of that in just a second. But if we look over here, that's why we have the 0, 1, 2 here, because that's the num. So if I come back and I change that to ASSOC, right? And that's exactly why I'm showing fetch num versus in the comment here, right? This is basically saying don't use just that number. Let me update that. It says actually use the column name, which is kind of what I prefer anyway. So if I refresh that, ooh, I introduced an error. Let's see what I did incorrectly there. But anyway, but you see how this is PID, PD text to view, and the PD timestamp instead of the 0, 1, 2. But let's see, it's saying that I got a problem on line 31. What the heck did I do wrong? So there's a real-time error. So come down here to line 31. Oh, and I'm doing demo result row 1. And I have to change that to the correct value. So this is PD text to view. And I need an apostrophe on that side and an apostrophe on that side. So now, right, so that was using the num. There, you can use both. There is a both, but it really is overkill. But I just wanted to make sure you saw the difference between fetch associated versus num. I'll save that, refresh that, and I have another instance of that problem on line 34. So I would like to say that this was all planned. And down here I have the number 2. So this is the P apostrophes, and this is my PD time stamp, right? There's the column name. If I didn't know what it was, I could come back here to the actual table, right? And if I look at the structure of the table, right? Here's, well, here it's 1, 2, 3, but that's really, right, with the starting at 0, it's 0, 1, and 2. That's why I replaced 1 with PD text to view and PD timestamp. But these are just the variable names that I created when I created that table. So let's come back here, refresh, and voila. So now we see here's those array values. And I'll bring up the code here. Right? So this demo result row with the pre-tags prints it out nice and pretty with the array, and there's the indexes and the actual values, right? The same as our values in the table, right? So there's record 1 and there's record 2. And then I say, right, the text to view is, and there's the actual value. But notice here that I have to look at that value as dollar, and let me just put this on a line by itself, right? This is our demo result row, right? So demo result row. So for each dollar demo result, right? And let's come up here to our demo result, right? Here's where it is, right? It's saying fetch all. So it's putting everything into demo result. So it's creating this array. And we're saying for each demo result as demo result row. And this will give me access one after each other of each individual row in the result set. And I can So that demo result row is an array, and it's an array with these 3 entries here. That's why this print R here shows it as an array like that, but then we have the text to view is, right? Here's that demo for the video, okay. Demo for the video, okay. And here's inserted row during video. Well, that's the row we inserted, right? And I can come back here and I can insert another row and one more row for the fun of it. And let's click go, come back, refresh, and you'll notice down here one more row for the fun of it. So, bringing the code back up, we see here's that row, but if I want to actually show the individual text, I have to reference the specific column by column name here. And that was the whole purpose of doing the bindColumn. So this is one way to go after it. And this is what makes this so cool, is that if you use this style, you don't have to do this style here. And let me save that. So anyway, there we go. And here's the actual statement here. So I'm just concatenating a bunch of stuff with an echo. But that's the important piece of the puzzle, is that by doing this for each demo result, right? And again, our demo result, that's our result set from doing the fetchAll. For each demo result as demo result row, so that gives me a variable with an individual row, then for that individual row, I have index values by column name. And again, depending on whether I do the ASSOC, associative or associate or whatever it is, ASSOC, right, versus num is whether or not I use a table name here versus the number. And that's why I just put in these comments here as such. And that's for these specific values in there. And I just did a little time function there. So, as you can see, we can connect to a table, and we connected to 2 different tables. One table, we got back values and demonstrated how to use the bindColumn. And in the other table, we demonstrated how to loop through using the fetchAll. So just the fetch, we returned them one at a time with binding the values. And in the second one, we did a fetchAll and looped through it with the for each. So once again, I will put this up on davecoast.com, so you'll have access to all of our 10 ingredients. So this is Dave. You can reach me at dave@davecoast.com, and or leave a comment at the bottom of the video. Thank you very much for watching.